Hi everyone, today I'm incredibly excited to interview someone who leads the direction of the product. Simon is the director of the product management at Google Labs, and he is one of the key people shaping the vision of NotebookLM, a product I personally use every single day. So this is a rare chance to go behind the scene. Let's start. Simon, could you briefly introduce yourself and share a bit about your role on the NotebookLM team?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Simon. So I'm one of the product leads on NotebookLM. As a product lead, I do many things. Oftentimes product leads are kind of the janitors of a project. So we kind of fill in the gaps and all of that kind of stuff. But I really enjoy working with Stephen and my other PM and product leads, engineering directors as well, to set direction. And really deliver an amazing product to all our users.
Because I met Steven Johnson 20 minutes ago, I'm really curious about how the NotebookLM team co-work with Steven.
Oh, yeah. Well, Steven has been absolutely instrumental since the very start of the project. In fact, I remember way when I started back in Labs, this would be a couple of years ago actually now, Steven, came on board in Labs. And at first I was like, what's this guy doing? Kind of an unconventional product lead in a way, or product manager. But as I got to know Stephen, I kind of understood that he really brought a really unique industry perspective actually to what we were trying to do. And I think that really speaks to the ethos of how we've tried to build NotebookLM over the years, which is really working hand in hand with creators, folks that are really trying to get the best out of AI to help them do better in what they're doing, either in the world of study or in the world of knowledge work. And Stephen's been absolutely passionate in trying to unlock that, and I think it's fair to say that you meet lots of people who maybe kind of avoid AI, especially if they're a writer. It's kind of one of these things that's easy to avoid. But Stephen's one of these guys who just leaned in. And it's just so exciting to work with somebody who's passionate about the possibility and the potential.
And I think he got two roles as a writer and a person who is obsessed with note-taking
That's
app.
right.
That insight is just really helped NotebookLM.
That's right. Especially in the early days, I mean, it's fair to say when you're starting a project, or a product, you have a vague idea of the potential for it, but you don't really know, and so it's really important to have people like Stephen around who can help you kind of establish a point of view and just put something out there. And then on the basis of that, you get the feedback and you get that loop running. But until then, the team is, we have lots of signals, obviously, and we do lots of research with users, but it's so important to have somebody who believes in like a point of view to help kind of give guidance. And Stephen was absolutely critical for that.
From the outside, NotebookLM feels like a mix between a research tool, a memory partner, and an AI lab notebook. As a person leading product direction, how do you define what NotebookLM is at its core? And how did the original concept come about?
Yeah, so I mean, with NotebookLM, we say that it's a tool to help you understand anything. And actually that's quite a deep statement. When I think about kind of what our mission is or what our goal is, if you've ever had to understand anything that's complex, if you've ever had schoolwork, for example, that you're kind of really worried about, or you've got to understand something for your job that you're like, man, that's a mountain of stuff. I have no idea how I'm going to get it done on time. You'll know the feeling that's kind of in your chest. That feeling is a feeling that I think me and the rest of the team want to kind of eradicate from the planet, so that whenever anybody has got a challenge like that in front of them, they know they can turn to Notebook and get all the helpful assistance that they need to understand the kind of the task they have ahead of them. I would say that's kind of been our North Star for what we want the project to make the user feel, and the kind of the superpower that we want to give every one of our users. I think, looking forwards, what we're leaning obviously much more into the world of, we don't think of them strictly speaking as kind of the technology agents, let's say, but if you could have something that was more like a thought partner or a coach, for example, that's really exciting. When I look to the new capabilities of Gemini and the kind of experiences it's going to allow us to build, those are the sort of things that I think the team is really excited to lean into next. I think the other thing that we've seen is that users, of course, they tend to, they use NotebookLM for these one-offs. So I've got a paper, I need to understand it, you put it in, you ask the question, and then you're done. But I think we're seeing more and more users starting to build bigger and bigger notebooks where they actually start to accumulate information over time. I don't know whether you've had this experience yourself. Yeah, you've done something similar. Yeah, so you the more you add, the more information you add to Notebook, we found actually the better Notebook gets. And I think that's just really interesting. And I think what we're finding is that, yes, it's great for these one-off things, but it's also really good for helping you with your life's projects or your life's hobbies. And that's kind of an exciting next phase, I think, for the product. Yeah.
Actually, Chengwei is my friend and we interviewed him before.
Oh, yeah, Chengwei is your friend. Oh, he's awesome. Yeah, great.
And I told him I got to interview you tomorrow, so he just recommended some question for me. There's a question. NotebookLM feels like it's designed not just to answer questions, but to help user actually think better. I think the concept is really closer to the concept you say is the thinking partner. So how do you approach supporting that deeper cognitive or learning process in the product design?
You and Chenwei just really lost talk about this.
Yeah, we love talking about this topic.
I want to hear about it.
No, we love talking about it. I'll go a little bit deep for a second, maybe kind of do a bit of a deep dive into how we think about it. A lot of how we're approaching the product is founded on a lot of the kind of academic research in how cognition works, and how we think about information. And so we think in terms of a lot of the decisions that we make are underpinned by frameworks of how we view the world, and also frameworks that folks in the world of education, folks in the world of cognition, over many years have learned really help us understand things. And so we think in terms of, let's say, 7 stages. So Notebook should be able to help you remember things, understand things, analyze things, evaluate things, apply things, and maybe even create new things. And you see this with audio overviews. And I think today we announced video overviews as well, which are going to be awesome. And I can't wait for you to see them. In terms of how that impacts product design, I'm a big fan of the idea of building a kind of an environment where you can interact with the information. And so this is called, in the literature, this is called a constructivist learning environment. So rather than it being a system where, you're presented with a bunch of tests, for example, or where you just have to read something and kind of commit it to memory, I'm much more interested in building a system where you get to interact with things. And so my dream for Notebook is, if you've ever been to a science museum where there's lots of interactive exhibits, or you've ever been to one of those science fairs where you can play with things and kind of learn through doing in a way, every notebook, when you open it up, yes, it should help you kind of get on top of the information and explore the concepts, but also the dream is for you to interact with the information as well and kind of follow your own curiosity and see where that takes you.
It's like information turning into a memory. Is that process going on?
Well, that's something that I'm personally very excited about. So understanding the stage that you're at in your learning journey or your understanding journey is something that I think Gemini is going to be much more capable of doing over the next 6 months. And we're really excited to kind of upgrade Notebook so that it's much more aware of not only your level of understanding in your current notebook, but maybe your level of understanding in the overall domain. So, for example, do you have a personal interest, or are you learning something yourself right now?
As a newsletter writer and a podcaster, I talk about lots of technology-related topics. For me, using the NotebookLM is a way to organize and interact with all the tech. I cover like Lego, NVIDIA things, and there's lots of technology stories or diving into the new tools and new ideas. My favorite part of NotebookLM is definitely MindMap feature. It's helped me to see the big picture and zoom in on the specific area and go deeper when I want to understand something more. What I really love about this process is how it's allowed me to interact with information. It's not just about reading, it's about engaging. That's make my memory stronger and my understanding deeper.
I think what's going to be next level is Notebook is going to get more and more aware maybe of what you already know about the notebook, and also your own personal interests and so on. So when it presents something brand new to you, or when you have to understand something new, it's able to rely on your past understanding. It kind of knows that you already understand the back history, so it doesn't have to explain everything from zero again. Something that's a bit more adaptive is something that I'm really excited about for Notebook.
I love the way you say it's not started with zero, because when I get in use NotebookLM again and again, and you can feel like you understanding things getting deeper and deeper. And I want to know is one thing that's stand out is the notebook-centric design, which feel intentional and different from typical chatbot UIs. Why did the team choose this structure? What kind of mental model or relationship with the product are you hoping to foster?
Yeah, I think for us, we saw a big opportunity. Obviously, Notebook came out in a world where everyone was trying to figure out what's going on with this new technology. And the bet that we placed is that the things that are kind of important to us in, our studies or hobbies or the world of work, they tend to be things that actually are not just like one-offs. They tend to be things that are a little bit bigger than a one-off. And so we wanted to place that bet. And that's really the bet that Notebook's placing. It's placing a bet that there's going to be these one-offs, and there are lots of other options, I would say, for those one-off things. But for the things that are really valuable to us, it's important to have them kind of as a growing knowledge base, let's say, that evolves with you over time. And that's the kind of the bet that we place very, very, very early on. I think you're seeing that now start to, play out as we add more and more functionality to Notebook. And certainly, with the Pro plan that we have, you can add many, many sources now into a notebook. I think it's like 150 sources or 300 sources rather into a notebook. And you can see with that direction, we're really going to a world where a notebook is an amazing place for you to run a whole project or to make progress with a project. Something that I'm personally really excited about, in addition to the adaptivity of Notebook, is also helping you make the next step. And so, with the Notebook of today, you've got to bring all of the sources. We recently released Discover Sources, so you can type in a thing and we'll go and look on the internet for you and find some options for you. But wouldn't it be great if, we understand that you're trying to understand something, or you're working on a project or a hobby, and we recommend some additional things to take you that next step forwards. So really that helping you with maintain momentum with these things that are high value for you is something that really kind of guides, I think, our decisions.
I think the other feature like Discover or MindMap is really different from like Code project or ChatGPT project. That was some go-to information recommend, and that was really fantastic things. I love that.
Yeah. Well, I've worked in consumer product at Google for many years on lots of different consumer products. And I know that when you give users a search box, I worked on the search app for many years, it's very powerful. You can ask anything. But at the same time, you don't know what to ask. And especially if you're trying to understand something for the very first time, you have no idea like what questions to ask or how to ask the questions and this sort of thing. And so with MindMaps, for example, you can automatically get kind of a bird's eye view of the information. The information comes at you, rather than you have to kind of like figure out how to navigate it. And I just think that point of view of not only providing a very powerful interface for users to follow their own curiosity through typing, but also kind of guiding the users is a really important part of building any sort of knowledge experience. You see the same thing in audio overviews as well, where we really help guide the user through the information. Actually in the audio overviews, one side of the hosts is really supposed to be kind of like you. So you're the host asking the questions, and the expert is answering the questions. And so what's actually happening as a listener, you're being guided through the information space in a way that's really pleasant and kind of makes logical sense. And that's an extension of that idea about bringing the information to you rather than you having to ask the questions.
Yeah, that was the part I love the NotebookLM, because there was no exploring things like the information. It's not just like, because I sometimes use Cloud Project, and that was just through lots of answer for you, but you're just not really enjoying that process. They're exploring or understanding things. And the MindMap things and the audio overview and the next is video overview. So what's been most challenging parts of building NotebookLM features like this?
Okay, so this is maybe a little bit unusual, maybe, because obviously at Google we have access to lots of amazing technology and all of that kind of stuff. But the most challenging thing, and I think the thing that both I and the engineers and the UX team are most proud of, is is the level of artistry, actually, and kind of joy that we want to bring in for every user of these products. So when you're using a mind map, for example, you can imagine it's quite easy to build a pretty basic mind map that doesn't feel awesome and kind of dynamic and smooth and all of this kind of stuff, right? But when you use a NotebookLM mind map, it feels really kind of futuristic and space age and just like really slick and well built. I think bringing that level of artistry to our kind of features is honestly, it's one of the hardest things because you've got to make a bit of a trade-off between launch right now and just do a little bit extra to really make it this kind of delightful product. Audio overviews, same thing, right? So it could have been a very wooden, two-sided conversation. There's many examples out there these days, but we invested just that extra bit of time and energy into making something that is sometimes funny, right? And sometimes makes you smile, and feels very real and natural. And we've tried to bring the same thing to video overviews, which is launching today. Or announced today, sorry.
When we can see video overview.
Yeah, so we just announced it, like literally an hour ago, I think. Yeah. So you can find an example on our Twitter feed. And the team will be posting a couple more examples in the coming days before launch.
And yesterday, NotebookLM launched a mobile app. Can you talk about more detail why NotebookLM should launch a mobile app?
The mobile app, yeah. Mobile app has been, it's one of our top user requests. And I think it just talks to the nature of the world, So while, we all work on laptops or desktops, for many people, their computer is their mobile phone. And so the first thing is just making Notebook more accessible to more people is really important. I think the second thing is mobile offers up, even if you have a laptop or a desktop, it allows you to do different things. So, for example, I love to use the app to do kind of walk and talk. So I can load some papers or load some presentations into my notebook, make some audio overviews, and then just go for a walk. And sometimes that really helps, just change of scene. Instead of being in the office or at my desk at home, I'm kind of out walking the dog, listening to some new information. It really helps me my brain unlock and me kind of find a different perspective. And being able to ask questions on the go while I'm doing that is honestly just like a magical experience and just feels very different to sitting at a computer and doing it, Kind of feels more like it should be in some sense. I think there are a couple of other things that the mobile app really helps with. So, sometimes it'll be the case where I'll just be like, oh, what was that thing? And I don't quite remember it. And the mobile app makes it really easy for me just to chat with a notebook and ask a question. And then the last thing is being able to share things into a notebook. And so, many times I'll have emails come at me with, PDFs and all that kind of stuff. And I'll have to remember, okay, I'll make sure when I get back to my desk, I'll download the PDF and I'll upload it to a notebook, right? There's quite a lot of friction there, right? What I really want to be able to do is be looking at the email on the go and just share it into a notebook. And with the mobile app, you can do that. And so it really makes the friction of creating a notebook and adding to a notebook really, really minimal. Going forwards, we're really excited to build more kind of mobile native features into the application as well. Like audio recording is something that lots of our users have asked for. If they're in a lecture or if they're in a meeting, wouldn't it be great if they could just put their phone down and, do native voice recording in the application so that you can immediately get a mind map and, all the other cool things that Notebook can bring for you, seconds later. That's a great example of something that is not really suitable you could build it on a computer or for the desktop, but it wouldn't be as interesting as building it for the mobile. And so it kind of opens up all of these new interesting consumption and capture use cases.
I think just in fragments, moments, and you just really immerse in that information. There are some inspiration came out randomly. I love the audio overview. I love to read, but somehow you just want to do some exercising or you just want to do another thing, just not really sit on the table or just in front of the screen, right? So you just want to put some earphone to listen something and like your personalized podcast. And that was just really interesting parts because somehow you do that things and when you immerse that information in the inspiration just really came out in really random way or random time.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. Yeah, we found that there's actually a lot of moments during the day where your brain's not particularly plugged in actually, and you've got to do those things. For me, it's actually the commute into work in the car, For many people, washing the dishes is another one. There's loads of these little moments where we've just got to do things with our hands, and you can make them much more valuable to you with something like audio overviews. And what I really like about that part of the product is it allows you to have control over the audio you're listening to. So instead of the kind of the same old news, for example, right, or turning on the TV or whatever, you can create some content that's really just for you, that really kind of helps you solve your information needs in the moment, there and then. And I love that about the product.
And today in the Google I/O, both AI Pro and Ultra include access to NotebookLM. How do they differ in features or limits? Who is each tier best suited for?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like Josh said on stage, the Ultra package is really a kind of VIP pass. And so with that package, we aim to offer really the most limits, so the most access to the features. The Pro tier also is very generous, I think, as well. And it's pretty rare to find somebody that hits the limits, to be honest, of the Pro tier. But the way we think about Notebook is not as much kind of differentiating based on, for example, model type and stuff like that, but it's much more towards kind of rate limits, number of times you can access something during the day. And it's finding those kind of, the everyday student or the everyday knowledge worker versus maybe someone who's a real power user at the top end. I don't think the Ultra is going to be for absolutely everybody, but for the people that really need it, that are hitting the limits. And we do have users who are in our Pro tier today who run out of audio overviews, for example. For those users, the Ultra package is going to be, really helpful and will allow them to get maximum value out of the product.
On a more personal note, how do you use NotebookLM? Could you share any tips, habits, or workflows you have developed using it, whether for work or outside of it?
Yeah, definitely. So this is a little bit left field, but it's also kind of... You're good? Yeah, this is a little bit left field, but it's also kind of cool. So, you good? Okay, yeah. This is also a little bit left field. So recently with Discover Sources, we launched Discover Sources, as I said. We've also launched the ability to change the language of Notebook. And what that actually lets you do is it lets you discover sources in another language to you. So, for example, at home we love to cook like spaghetti. Spaghetti bolognese is my kid's favorite meal. But all I've ever gone with is the recipe from my mom, who's not Italian, right? So I was really interested. How do the Italians cook spaghetti bolognese?
So you choose language?
So if you choose the output language to be Italian, you can go and type into Discover Sources like spaghetti bolognese recipe. It will go off. Notebook will search the Italian internet for spaghetti bolognese recipes, bring them into Notebook. But because Notebook doesn't care about language, if I change my language back to English and then I do a mind map or I ask, hey, what's the recipe? The recipes, like everything will be in English. It'll be in a language that I can understand, even though it's like totally authentic. So in this case, I've learned, I should be adding milk to my spaghetti bolognese recipe. I had no idea that I should be adding milk, but apparently that's like a really good thing. And so this list lets you ask questions in other languages. And I think that's something that is almost like underused by users, to be honest. You can do many other fun things like this. So for example, I'm half Japanese. And it's kind of funny to figure out, okay, in San Francisco, what do Japanese people think is the best Japanese restaurant in San Francisco? So I can change the language to Japanese, go and type in English, what's the best Japanese restaurant in San Francisco? And then Notebook will actually go on the Japanese internet and find Japanese people's opinion about what the best restaurant is. And I can obviously share that with people. So being able to kind of treat the internet as a single language, I think is almost like a superpower that most people don't really know about, that's hidden inside Notebook. We're going to try and make that a little bit more obvious, I think, and a little bit clearer. But it's really fun to do, especially, we all cook every day. And so it lets you kind of make things like a local. And I love that part of it.
Yeah, I love it. I love this case.
Yeah.
I never expect that to.
Exactly. Building things that people can play with is kind of a hallmark of Notebook. And so that's a really fun thing that came out of that project.
So when you learn something new and when you use the NotebookLM typically?
Oh, okay. Well, if it's something new, my immediate first step is MindMap. Personally, I go straight to the MindMap just to kind of get an overview of it. Then I will actually listen to the audio overview if it's something very, very fresh to me. From there, it kind of depends. Sometimes that'll be it, and I've kind of got everything I need to know Other times, I'll be typing in questions, I'll be doing Q&A, that sort of thing. But that kind of is my path. It's kind of mind map, audio overview, and then Q&A if I need it. And then, of course, I think where Notebook really shines is when you have more than one source, where you can kind of cross-reference things and ask questions across sources. And so I really enjoy kind of building these knowledge bases up. We have some really interesting knowledge bases of user feedback, for example, that are extremely, powerful, and they give us a bird's eye view into, what our users care about, what the pain points are right now, what we need to fix next. So that's kind of a key use case that I use. It's kind of to learn about our users, which is obviously an ongoing, changing thing as we launch new products.
Simon, thank you so much for sharing your time and your insights. As a heavy user, it's been incredibly rewarding to hear direct from the person shipping the product. And to our listeners, if you haven't tried NotebookLM yet, that was truly no better time to jump in.
Yes, give it a try. Download the app.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye.